I'm Cyclon. In the past few days my build definitely has changed quite a bit. So, I did make a league start guide, but those league start guide very quickly got some changes in. I adjusted on the fly, I adjusted to the new tattoos, and I ended up with this amazing build. And because of some demand for it on my Discord over DMs, and also I think it was 1 or 2 comments on the YouTube channel, I wanted to quickly give you this full guide how you do all the transitions I did and what you can do to further improve the build from the current stage that I am at. Now, because I tried to push this out very quickly, there will be less editing on this video, maybe even no editing. I do apologize for that. Once I'm going with the next video, there will be more editing again. Now, trying to keep this as simple and as quickly as possible. There will be a PoE in the description. I will go over the PoE now. I will show the different stages of upgrades. Everything is included, all the different trees, all the different skill sections, all the different item sections, and even a note section considering all the different upgrade stages that you can do, as well as a leveling section. Now, you can grab this, you can just take it and read it through yourself or read along while I talk about this. I'm going to assume either one of two things. You're starting from 0, so you're going to take the whole PoE, you're going to start making a new character, you level up, you farm some currency with Chaos Recipe, with Altar farming, you get the upgrades and you're good to go. Or alternatively, you have some budget, you might have already a Raider, or you're going to quick level a Raider, then transition into the Tornado Shot crit swap stage of the build. Either of those two is the starting point. You start out with 0, you take the PoE, start from the beginning, or you're going to already have a Raider or have some budget, so you're going to have already on crit, and you're going to get either Lightning Arrow and level your gems, or you're going to buy the gems and are on the Tornado Shot swap stage. This is what I recommend to start at. Again, 0 or Tornado Shot. Alright. Let's take a look at this. Very quickly for those starting at 0. You're going to want to level with Precise Technique, prioritize then Onslaught with Graceful Assault and damage, move on to getting some life and some precision, because we need to keep our accuracy high, and then from there on it's really just getting more damage and more survivability. With the exception of it should be around end of Act 5, start of Act 6, we're going to grab in the following priority. We're first going to grab +1 pierce, so we can drop pierce from our Lightning Arrow. We're then going to grab the additional projectile here and here. And finally we're going to grab the last pierce later on, so we have 3 pierce. This will allow our Lightning Arrow to drop pierce support gem, and we will just have a better time in campaign. As for our Ascendancy choices, Gathering Winds, Far Shot, Endless Munition Fork during campaign, and we're going to end up with Focal Point. And once we swap to Tornado Shot, we're going to replace Focal Point with Ricochet. Focal Point with Assassin's Mark will result in always critting, which is really great when you still need to get your Void Stones, your bosses down, or you still don't have that much good gear and need some damage. Once we are on Tornado Shot, the +1 chain on it is really good, so we want that over the improved mark effectiveness. Now, in the crit swap stage, this is still assuming Lightning Arrow. Our tree is basically done. We are on a pretty powerful character already that can clear maps. But once we get to Tornado Shot, there are some changes that we want to do. So, we're going to start with when you want to swap to crit. Crit is all a question of how many passive points you have. So once you have enough passive points, you can do your crit swap. Your gear doesn't change, your gem setup doesn't change. I guess except you replace Sniper's Mark with Assassin's Mark and you start using Returning Projectile. Now you are on your crit stage. Perfect. What you need to do to get to Tornado Shot. To swap from Lightning Arrow to Tornado Shot, you need level 20 skill gems. So, Lightning Arrow, Returning Projectile, you might need to recolor your body or your bow, because you want to use Tornado Shot, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Chain, Mirage Archer, Trinity, Inspiration. GMP, Chain, Tornado Shot are the 3 gems that are important here to be level 20, for this to feel good. Once you've seen that your Tornado Shot already feels better than your Lightning Arrow in terms of clear and damage, then you want to grab your Helmet enchantment, which is here. You want to grab the Tornado Shot fires additional secondary projectile, which if you have 5 projectiles and no enchantment, that's 15 arrows after the split. If you have the Helmet enchantment, that's 20. Now if you have 10 projectiles and no enchantment, that's 30 arrows, but with the additional, that is 40 arrows. It just gets better and better with more and more projectiles that you're grabbing. Alright, so we have your helmet enchantment, and the next thing we want are clusters. My personal preference is Arcing Shots, Feats of Fury, Martial Prowess cluster. Arcing Shots will definitely help us with the crit that we lost from not having Assassin's Mark. Our medium clusters are going to be Pressure Point Quick Getaway, again for crit and for double damage. And again, having double damage or introducing double damage into the build. Once you have this, you can grab some jewel sockets if you have levels, but the jewel sockets is actually something that I did even grabbed except one for Inspired Learning, which is a must if you want to farm Legions. Legion or Delirium, if you don't have an Inspired Learning, you're doing something wrong on this build. Alright, once we have everything, once we have the helmet enchantment, we have the cluster, we have done Tornado Shot Swap, we are good to go to the next stage. At this point you already should feel very powerful farming Legions or farming whatever you prefer. I case farmed Legions, so I'm going to talk about Legions, because Legions are fun. By the way, if you want to farm Legions, there is a video that I will link at the end of this video that is very interesting to you. Next is your Omni Swap stage. To properly swap to Omniscience, there are some things that you will need. You will need a Brutal Restraint, or a Lethal Pride. I prefer Brutal Restraint, because Brutal Restraint has some interesting things, such as Alchemist Genius, which gives you increased Flask Charges gain and Flask Effect. Other things is Dexterity, then it has, do I have one example on this one? Projectile damage or elemental damage, and then it can give you things like life or movement speed, which is all great for this build. Brutal Restraint has a lot of things that are good for you, while Lethal Pride has just percentage strength and double damage. And by the way, double damage again we already have from Pressure Point, so we don't really need more double damage. So this is one thing you need. Another thing you need is likely you need to keep your taming. You want to keep the taming because your resistances. Omniscience really guts your resistances. So a taming and then about 35 resistances rolls, 35 to 45 resistance rolls. My example, I have one here on the quiver and a crafted rest on the belt. You might need one additional one. If we take a look at my current build at that stage, I've actually used a quiver with that had just double rest on it. So you don't need this insane of a quiver at this stage, just get a double rest quiver with additional crit multi and being on the feathered base, because that is really good for the build. Getting to why in a moment. That is what you need for the Omni Swap. Just keep your resistance high and get enough Omniscience to use all your gear and you're good to go. Now, mentioning a few things that I'm doing differently than other builds here. Or actually not differently, but those that I include. A Death Rush is something that you should have picked up either pre-Omni Swap or now at latest with the Omni Swap. Having Adrenaline will make your maps feel a lot better. It makes them feel faster, it makes you feel stronger, it's really good. And while you're mapping, Adrenaline should be up at all times, especially when you're running Legions. Then another thing that I prefer is Shadow and Dust. There are people using World's Vision and Chaos Spirit to have Rage, but if you don't have at least almost permanent uptime on Berserk, so talking about only having Berserk on downtime when it's on cooldown, the moment it ends cooldown you should be at full rage again, makes it feel, in my opinion, worse than Rampage. Rampage, especially for Legion or DD mapping, feels almost impossible to lose it, except if you're taking your time with every kill. At this stage with this build you should be able to keep a Rampage up almost all map or close to complete, close to for the full map. So in my opinion, Shadow and Dust, especially because the implicits on it, as a proper corruptions on this, are way cheaper, I like more than the Chaos Spirit version at the moment. So Death Rush, Shadow and Dust, really great for improving your mobility in your map. Alright, moving on after the Omni Swap stage are your additional gems. So here are some that I would grab early. Awakened Fork and Awakened GMP. These are the highest priorities. They're going to be expensive likely, but they are really great. Alternatively to Awakened Fork, you can grab Awakened Chain. However, I prefer Awakened Fork for the arrow math. An Awakened Chain is going to be, you have your 10 projectiles, they split into 40, and then you're going to get another 40, with Awakened Chain and a +1 chain from the tree, you're going to get 40 hits, additional 4 times 40 hits in, so that's a total of 200 hits. But now we get to Awakened Fork. The Awakened Fork is going to do the following. You have 2 forks and 1 chain. So this is starting with your 10 primary projectiles splitting into 40, so that's 40 hits. Assuming everything hits, of course. In a Legion or in a daily map, that's very likely. So you have your 40 hits, forking into 80, so that's now 120 hits. Your 80 projectiles then fork into 160 projectiles, so that is 280 hits in, and then all those 160 projectiles fork chain once. So all those projectiles is 280 plus 160 is 340 projectile hits. Now that's a lot of damage. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But yeah, that is a lot of projectiles. And that's why I prefer Awakened Fork over Awakened Chain. However, if Awakened Chain is cheaper than Awakened Fork, definitely go with Chain. Both work just fine for mapping. Now, another thing that I guess I should mention here is, I see people upgrading to Tornado Shot Ballistas, or using Lightning Arrow Ballistas, or using Ice Shot Ballistas, or Barrage Ballistas. Personally, in my opinion, your Tornado Shot for mapping will already be enough clear that you don't need additional clear help. And for single target, from all I tested, Artillery Ballista has the highest amount of single damage help that you can get, so this is why I would recommend staying on Artillery Ballista. So, except then having these, after you upgraded Awakened Fork and Awakened Inspiration, you kept your Artillery Ballista. Something that I will change is Anomalous Inspiration here and Anomalous Inspiration here. And then you can also grab a Divergent Mark on Hit. Those are the high priority gem changes. Afterwards, at any point now or later, you can grab Anomalous Mirage Archer, Awakened Element Damage with attacks and cold damage for your Artillery Ballista, and you could potentially replace your Trinity with an Awakened Elemental Damage with attacks. However, you will do this to get Reflect immunity on your Tornado Shot, but in my opinion, I still die to this, like maybe random Fizz Reflect, or I do a Flame Dash and I had Inspired Learning stacks and I still die to that. So I prefer to just always reroll Reflect maps, so Trinity is good enough and we don't need the second Awakened Elemental Damage with attacks. Now, having done your gem upgrades, there is really just a few things left to do. The next thing that I will target for is the Mageblood. Once you have your Mageblood, you allow yourself to have pressure relief from the resistances, as you can just get a suffix for that. So you can replace your ring finally with an Omni ring. You can replace your quiver with a really good one. You don't need that much resistance. As you can see, my resistances are way overcapped. So you don't need resistances anymore. You just get the suffix. And if a suffix alone is enough, you can just use a Bismuth Flask in the first place. And this will already make your build feel very, very powerful because of all the additional speed you're going to have now. Finally, once you have all this done, there's really just a few things left to do, and those are the endgame upgrades. Endgame upgrades are things like getting a massive Thread of Hope, getting a Corrupted Blood on your Inspired Learning, Corrupted Blood Immunity, and grabbing Progenesis. You can grab the rest of your gems, you can grab the rest of your gear, you can grab one additional projectile tattoo. Now, I forgot to mention this, but the first additional projectile tattoo we want actually very early on for our Tornado Shot to feel even better, because more primary projectiles means more secondary projectiles, means if you have more forking or more chaining, meaning more hits. And then the big final upgrade of the build would be a high elemental damage bow, preferably with +2 projectiles, but at this point we would be on mirror tier. But yeah, that's really all there is to this build. Hopefully it wasn't too long, but now you should be able to, at any point where you're at, jump into, get the rest of your upgrades done, farm more legions, farm more daily, farm more, I don't know, map rushes, expedition, essences, whatever you're running, but you will now be able to upgrade your build the way I did and have a lot of fun with Tornado Shot. All that being said, have a wonderful day and goodbye.